Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Travel Mug podcast. Today we are joined by Anna, and we are so excited to chat with her about long term solo travel and making connections while traveling. So, Anna is a Canadian full time traveler, content creator, and digital nomad who is passionate about solo travel, experiencing local culture, and creating affordable trips. We love affordable trips here. So she is also the founder of Your Travel Friend, which is a community connecting international folks to fulfill the need of a go-to travel friend who possesses all of the insider knowledge. So the community allows humans to connect, support each other, share stories, uncover local hidden gems, and support to understand cultural nuances. And we'll definitely be chatting about that a little bit later. Welcome to the show, Anna.
Hello, thank you so much for having me join two other Canadians and talk about travel, my favorite combination that is sometimes hard to find.
Yes. Yeah. It's so exciting. So, how did you fall in love with travel? Was being a digital nomad a goal for you, or how did that sort of happen for you?
Oh yeah. So I think the bug I say for travel started when as a kid we lived in the Netherlands for 3 years, and I think that was when I got the taste of obviously hearing a different language, even though many Dutch people speak English, the taste for other food, getting to travel around Europe. And then when I decided to go to university, although I stayed in university in Canada, I decided to go to a different province. So I think that kind of like just wanting a change of environment. And I was living in Vancouver, and as many of us post-pandemic, we kind of were like, "What are we doing with our lives? Should we change it up?" And 10
Yeah.
you had something similar happen. So,
Yeah.
yeah, my story goes at the time I was in a relationship. I wondered, okay, where's this going? Going nowhere. Got it. I had a career that wasn't really an exciting job position. And I had freelance clients already. At that time, it was probably about 5 years already. I had some freelance work, and I told them, I think I'm gonna like do this from other places in the world. How does that sound? I had ultimate control. So I knew I wanted to leave Vancouver, moved my base back to Calgary, and then I thought, I don't know where I want to be in Canada, so I'll just travel for a bit. And here we are over 3 years later. And I think I learned about the term digital nomad during that trip. So that first
Mhm.
trip and meeting people who were working a full-time remote job. And since then I've got such exposure to the variety of digital nomads. And it is
Mhm.
still a new term because I definitely meet people who are asking me like, what is that term you call yourself? So I sometimes call it just like working as I travel. It's not a vacation for sure, but yeah, so I just take my freelance work with me and it's worked out so far.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
I would call it vacation adjacent. I would
Ooh.
call
I like that. I like that.
Shellfish. No, and I think that it is a relatively new term, but I think it is something people are getting a bit more used to hearing. And it certainly is one of those things that a lot of people won't do, but it's still probably like, oh, I would, that would be my dream job. So just think about that on days that are tough for you. Be like, I'm living the life that people do dream of. So that's something, a little nugget you can take away. And because so many people do dream of long-term travel. So
Yeah.
I guess, to get to the meat and potatoes of it, can you share some tips for someone who's hoping to start traveling more long term? Like, I know you're working, but still,
Yeah.
how do you manage your budget and plan your destinations? Because a lot of times when people have like the 3 or 4 weeks of vacation, they put so much time and effort into that one trip. And that's sort of what you're doing all the time. So, or more frequently, I should say. So, talk us through sort of how you travel long term.
Yeah, definitely. And also I love that you said meat and potatoes of it because that is such a Canadian slang. And
And then I thought you're vegetarian, so I probably should have said like beans and potatoes, but here we
no.
are.
For people who don't know, it's so funny because I gotta digress of how I found you both, and I was looking for other travel podcasts just to like stay inspired, and then I heard car. One of you said car, and I was like, that is an East Coast accent, and I just got so excited. So it's interesting because since coming back from one of my longer trips, just coming back to my base in Canada for a little bit of time, it's so funny the slang that you don't realize is Canadian slang until you
Yeah.
come back and then so meat and potatoes. I know. But back to your question, I guess I've kind of stumbled upon it in the sense of like I didn't want to go home.
Yeah.
I'm having fun. I'm working it out. And I think I always preface there's no right way to do it. So I do think there is some social comparison happening with digital nomad lifestyles. There's such a mix of people. So I've met folks that really base themselves like 3 months of the year in 4 different places. That's how they live their life. They go 3 months, 3 months, 3 months. Some people do 6 months and 6 months. We have the classic snowbird, as we call it in Canada. And then there's friends of mine who work remote jobs in a 9 to 5 in their time zone of wherever their job is located, yet they're travelers at heart. So the first priority is like still exploring and somehow they figure it out, like taking
Mhm.
calls at 5 a.m. in Kyrgyzstan because they're on like Pacific time. It's crazy. So for me, it's a lot about energy levels in terms of social battery, in terms of how I'm feeling, not trying to get burnt out. So often, if I find myself in a very social environment, a co-living or surrounded by other digital nomads, I usually follow it up with a bit of solo time, and that's also a bit more work
Yeah.
time. So
Mhm.
if you can plan ahead, if you have control in like owning your own business or being self-employed, you can kind of play with that. If you know that one week's going to be event focused, and then the next you can kind of, you literally just live in a city as if you were at home. So I think it's like breaking down that because I don't know for you both, correct me if I'm wrong, we're planning more vacations and like really tight packed trips. Whereas
Mhm.
this, we might do 1 week of a really tight packed trip, or the first week we arrive somewhere, we're doing walking tours and exploring the city. And then the next week, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I wake up, I get a coffee, do a couple hours there, do lunch, maybe go for an afternoon walk, a little bit more work, have dinner, and that's my day. And people are like, why didn't you explore more? And, you have to remember, it's like, I always think too, you have to, if you want to keep traveling longer term, you have to build habits and be sustainable because you don't have that. Well, I'm going to go home on Friday. Like, let's push ourselves to the very end and we can sleep on the flight
Right.
home. So I don't
Yeah,
know. Yeah,
definitely.
it's kind of an experience like that.
I think
Yeah, it's definitely.
oh, go ahead, Jen.
Sorry, it's definitely a different mindset for sure. Like when you're essentially, living there, that you have to switch out of that like vacation, I have to see everything mode
Yeah.
and switch into like this is where I'm living for this period of time. And so I need to balance like things that I need to get done in my life, like work and, like regular stuff like cooking meals and laundry and getting groceries as well as the like sightseeing and like getting out and exploring type stuff too, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think for me it's a mix of I usually would do like a work hard, play hard kind of analogy. So
Yeah.
maybe, I love working in Europe because actually I don't usually start diving into my laptop till like 2 or 3 p.m. So I spend the mornings if I'm
Okay.
seaside, I go to the beach, I enjoy the daytime, and then I kind of dive into the evening, or I do that walking tour and then I dive into work. So it's a
Mhm.
nice like so you're not doing a full day of activities. You're only kind of doing that maybe 30%. So you can like break it
Yeah.
apart over a couple days. And sometimes you hear about things more too. So like being there longer term is better because someone might say, "Oh, no, 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 let me like help you get on this boat," or like just come with me
Yeah.
and it's cheaper and it's a better experience because you're with the locals. So that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm taking my first like working trip soon in May, and so it's I mean it's only 10 days. It's like a much shorter trip, but I am working my regular like 9 to 5 job while I'm there, and I'm already feeling some like anxiety about how I'm balancing everything, and I'm sure it'll be fine, but it's a totally different mindset for sure.
Do you feel like what is your like big fear with trying
I
to vacation or experience while also stay focused with your job?
Yeah, yeah. I honestly am like anxious about not being able to see everything that I want to see
Uh-huh.
because I do have to spend those 8 hours, like on my laptop. So hopefully I'll be able to balance that by like working from a local cafe and like going for a walk at lunch. But yeah, it's just it does shorten the time that you have to like see things.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, just you maximize the time. So your lunch break is going to be probably a little bit more exciting of a lunch break than perhaps in your home base. But also it's
Yeah.
so cool that you don't have to take vacation time and you can do this remotely. And once you're done work, you get to like step outside to a whole new environment. So I think that's my favorite thing is, you're like, wow, it's so cool. Like, your laptop's a familiar space. You close your laptop and you're like, wow, look where I am. Like you kind of come back to
Yeah.
your present self and you're in a really epic place.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
for
completely
sure.
agree. And I think, we also wanted to talk about how you sort of balance traveling and working. And I think you've covered that a bit. But I did want to go back on one thing that you mentioned about how sort of like overstimulation when you're cohabitating with people and the next week needing to be, a more quiet space or just by yourself. Do you find that doing this or having this type of, work life lifestyle, you've really gotten to know who you are and what your boundaries are and what you need for yourself? Because I think when you're in your home and your own space, it's pretty easy to do what you wish and you know what works for you. But have you really sort of had to get to know yourself differently by living this type of lifestyle?
Oh, for sure. I feel like I'm hyper aware of myself, almost like it's a detriment now because I'm like so in tune with my emotions. And I've always attested it to like I grew up dancing and like as a dancer, you're like hyper aware of your body and every tiny movement
Yeah.
and how one thing's gonna make the next move happen or how you feel in your body. And I feel like that's come to like my mind and just my workflow. So I'm used to being in control of my day to day as well, which I say that in the sense of like I really have ultimate control over like what my energy levels are. But yeah, I'm definitely an extroverted introvert. So I get so excited meeting new people and I'm like in there, in there, in there. And then like 1 week later I'm sick and I'm like, what happened? And I was like, oh. So I call it like everyone needs to schedule Netflix breaks in. I need to go have my reality TV binge. That's kind of like that just brings me back to this like calm, just kind of taking that break from people. And I've also learned like naturally we're attracted to extroverted people when meeting new people, whether that's like a short-term engagement with someone or like you meet a friend and you hang out with them for a month. So I think for me, I'm attracted to the extroverted people to bring me the energy. But then I usually end up hanging out with more of like the quiet, more introverted people because I can sustain that relationship or like those engagements throughout a longer chunk of time, whether it's a month, 2 months. Even if it's just a day, it's like, okay, your energy's a lot. And at the end of this day, I know I'm going to be really burnt out. So how about we just do coffee and then I'm going to go by myself? So I think you can learn too. Like, I don't know if you've ever met someone where you've had to like, you deny their friendship. You do a walking to it, they're like, lunch together. And you're like, no, thank you.
But I appreciate the offer.
And you
Yeah.
walk in the same direction to the restaurant. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
that awkward, like, I'd rather eat alone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
So the
so much.
balance of travel and working, it's so hard. Like
Yeah.
it's a constant like battle of yeah, like you want to see things, you have to eat and you have to do laundry at some point. So I think it's always prioritizing. I think that's a big thing is learning what is a priority, what's the fun priority and what's the you can get it done quick, but a laptop at a laundromat is a great workstation, just saying. So you kind of like kill two birds with one
Yeah.
stone. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, work-life balance is a challenge no matter where
Mhm.
you are. Like it literally doesn't matter. So, yeah, we all struggle with that. I want to circle back to the budget
Hey.
because I feel like when I am exploring a new place, I want to do all of the things. I want to eat at all of the restaurants. So, how do you sort of, budget to make sure that you are getting to do those exciting things, but also like not eating in restaurants every single day?
Yeah, for sure. So I think different to so we can use your upcoming 10-day trip. It is as an example. Of course, we said that you're working, but in 10 days, you might have put aside money or you have an expected budget that you're going to spend. So maybe you're like, okay, it's like, flights and everything included. It's $2,000 for this 10-day trip. I'm totally pulling a number out of
Sure.
the but you
Yeah.
kinda have like, "Okay, I can spend however many dollars a day on food." But with longer term travel and in my situation, I have a fluctuating income, so I can't really
Right.
base that, and if you're changing countries too, it can very much vary. Going from France to Turkey is gonna be a way different eating budget. So my rule of thumb
Yeah.
is I always try and have 1 meal in at least. If it's somewhere where I can't properly cook and have a stock of groceries, which is usually like a 1 week
Yeah.
stay or more, I usually do. I think like
Yeah.
an easy yogurt and granola, like if you're staying somewhere for 2, 3 days and you have access to a fridge, grab a couple of those in like single yogurts, a bag of granola, and a couple bananas. Bam, you got breakfast. And then you can have less guilt about lunch and dinner. Or if there's a really, not Michelin star, like I've never been at that budget level, or there's like, some kind of restaurant that you're really interested in, or you want to have that kind of 3 course wine pairing kind of experience, maybe that you do find just that street sandwich shop for lunch. Or I think kind of that street fast food combined with a sit down eating. That's kind of how I balance it out. Honestly, it depends on the work schedule too. So sometimes I'm like, I'm in a really great workflow. I'm just gonna literally go, and I remember being in Prague in the Czech Republic, and there was like a great just like kind of sandwich salad shop that I don't know what we would call it in Canada, like almost an extreme pita or a Subway, which I hate. And you guys talked about Subway on a podcast. I haven't been to Subway in so long. But, it wasn't the fancy thing. It's not like Prague's traditional food, but I do feel like it was busy. Like people eat there, it is part of their culture and their life now. So kind of fun. Yeah, budget's really hard. And I think it really depends on what, it sounds like Jen, you like food a lot. So you're going to budget heavy on the food side, where someone might budget heavy on the activity side and not care at all what they're eating. So
before we get to the next question, I'm going to interrupt and say, you say Canada and sandwich, and I know exactly where you're from. So I'm just going to put that out there. Maybe we say car differently, but sandwich in Canada, the way you say it tells me the western part of this country.
If there's any native English speakers, they might pick up on this. But for any international friends listening, if you don't understand what we're talking about, that is A-okay. Because for me, they say car, like really hard emphasis on the R, almost like an Irish accent, which of course makes sense with the history of the East Coast. I didn't know sandwich, I sounded different. So.
Oh, yeah. You're heavy on the end.
Yeah, we would say sandwich, like sandwich.
Sandwich. And you say sandwich like your fancy. And we're more laid back with that.
I love that.
So yeah, I couldn't control it any longer. I was hearing it and I'm like, I can't not say it. So in terms of downsides or a downside, they have to exist of what you're doing. Nothing is perfect. So I'm just looking for you to share with our listeners things or something to keep in mind when considering possibly being a digital nomad or a long-term traveler. Because I think, it's great to talk about, all of the lovely things that are involved, but I think it's important to give realistic snapshots as well.
100%. And I am like maybe a little bit more on the pessimistic side, because I think, of course, Instagram gives a highlight reel, YouTube gives a highlight reel, but there's so many, I wouldn't say downsides, but challenges that come up that are different. Primarily if you are solo traveling, I can't speak from a longer term travel time of traveling with a partner. I've traveled with friends or lived with a friend for apartment, often another digital nomad friend. But I think the biggest thing is just kind of when you need those breaks, or you're really, really heavy in work and you want something that from your home base that feels really comforting, and like that doesn't exist. There's been many times where I'm like 3 or 4 months into a trip and I just want to teleport myself to my couch and just like know that I have this big comfy couch and I can watch TV, and it's definitely like a North American comfort, and I want to be zapped right back. Like I just want 2 days of this comfort where we have a pantry, which is also such a Canadian word. Instead of always trying to have to find food, and like, because you're doing adulting while working, while traveling, while mixing culture. And to speak openly, it's like as a female too, sometimes like you don't want to go out when it's dark. So you're like, okay, so dinner's a granola bar, unless I want to take myself out in the dark and try and find food. Well, I don't really want to sit alone because I'm just, maybe sometimes it's about a confidence thing too. Like I'm not really in a good space to like sit and eat by myself and just really enjoy the meal. I'm really hyper aware of my surroundings, and I can't just sit and eat and enjoy my meal. So I think that's a big downside. And you're constantly a travel agent. So different again to this kind of like 1 week to 4 week even trip where you have a return date. If you're consistently going, even if you have breaks between, like you start to travel 1 week and then you're like, oh, where am I going to live the next week or the next month? So I've left it pretty tight sometimes about where I'm going to live. And I'm quite an organized person, but Especially in Europe, I'm a bit too risky with the like, oh, we're not going to sleep in 4 nights. We should figure that out.
Oh my god, I think
Jen
that
just
just
had
gave
a
me
heart attack. Jen literally just had a heart attack.
But it's so funny because I'm like, I am quite a planner. Like I like to have everything. I'm like Mary Poppins big kind of gal. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe in other continents or other places I'd be different. But in Europe, I'm a bit slack with it. So Jen, is that like giving you anxiety not knowing where you're gonna sleep?
Yeah, it does, yeah. I could not operate like that, and I don't, like when I started so I have a travel blog that I started, I think in 2017, so, like, it's been
Mhm.
quite a while, we'll say for travel, and so at that point in my life, I was kind of, like, figuring what I wanted to do for work, and, I really wanted to be not necessarily a digital nomad, but at least location independent,
Mhm.
which I am now essentially with my work. I do work full time for, like a corporate company. There is some restrictions about where, like countries that I can work from,
Mhm.
but essentially I can move around. On the flip side of that, I have three animals and a house from the 1850s. So I'm
Yeah.
not location dependent in that way because I've really tied myself down to this house. Um, but yeah, it's I don't remember where I was going with that
That's
at all.
I just want to know
We were
you don't have any like down you can do trusted house sitters too. You can have someone come and care for your pet in your house.
Yeah. Yeah, and we do have people that come and stay with our animals when we travel. But I remember where I was going now. I don't think that long-term travel is for me. Like I do like having my home
Mhm.
base, my home office, my home couch, and my animals around me. So
Yes.
it's just really interesting that I kind of set out to be location independent and then decided that I don't know if that life is for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously not everything is for everyone and it's all about your comfort level and like what you want. And I can completely agree with that. I think for me, like, I don't think long-term travel while working is for me, but I do think we have a bit of a plan in place where, by the time we're not old but older, that's what we want to do. So that my husband and I, we don't have any kids. So I think that is sort of our plan because I think, and not to be morbid, but our parents may not be here by that point. We will
Mhm.
have that to worry about as well. So I think, that's definitely in life can throw you curveballs, of course, but that is sort of definitely a longer term plan for us. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll check
It's
back in
Yeah.
10 years, guys. See
Yeah.
what
it's
happens.
really not for everyone. I met a gentleman, a Swedish gentleman, and he set out on this like 6 month nomad journey. He had it quite planned. And after the 6 months, he wrote a really awesome Instagram post that I like should share more because he said, it's not for me. He said, and this is why it's
Mm.
not for me. And I should read it back. But it was just so nice to hear from someone too who, we think, oh, it's like trendy and cool to be a digital nomad. But he said, I love traveling. I would sometimes work remotely, but like the nomad lifestyle is not for me. And I will say, like, those nuances of wanting a home base, returning to a location again is kind of how I fix that problem. So, for example, in Europe, I have some extended family in Germany. I've spent a chunk of time in Sofia, a chunk of time in the country of Montenegro as well. So, the familiarities of those places sort of become that like one I don't know how to it's not like one whole aspect, but you're like, "Oh, I know what to expect a little bit." And then you just have that side of your nervous system a little bit calmer and you're like, "I know what I can expect for food and I know where a good bakery is at least."
Yeah.
Right, right. That's a key. I mean,
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, so I would love if you could talk to us about a place that you've traveled that maybe you went with some like lower expectations and then it like was super amazing or like really exceeded your expectations and what maybe would have changed your mind about that destination.
Yeah, it's like everyone always asks, "What's your favorite place?" And I always say,
Yeah.
"For what purpose?" Like, give me a second context to plan it with. My last trip was mostly in the Balkans for a longer period of time, and overall, it surprised me a lot about the Balkan countries because I think perhaps coming from Western Canada, and I want to speak like lightly on this, but I think there is a little bit of a stereotype of them being behind in technology or just kind of rougher or not as economically stable and like just I don't know if messy is the right word. And I want to like break those stereotypes because for
Mhm.
sure we have some things that are like in technology are advancing and maybe our economic state, well, I don't know right now, but in normal times is a bit more stable and the government is less corrupt. So I'm not getting political or economical because those are not my strong suits. But I think what I like about the Balkans and what surprised me, and I'm speaking more in like Montenegro, Bulgaria, also, I mean, Hungary is a little different because Budapest, I think, is a world in itself in Hungary. But like some of the yeah, Montenegro, Albania, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, they're just chill. Like they are a mindset in my experience of like we make money, we spend money, we have coffee multiple times a day with people. You just call up your friend and they show up at the coffee shop, whereas Western society is like in 3 weeks at 2 p.m. Are you
So
available? Can you make it? And the day before, oh, suddenly I can't make it. And then it's like, why did I even schedule it in? So I think what surprised me about the Vulcan culture, and I really do like, is just it is simple. It is a little bit of that, like less of that hustle mentality, maybe because they don't have the opportunities we have. But it makes me more relaxed. Like I don't feel that pressure. You know, in Montenegro, this one town I lived in, they built one story of the house and they left the rebar in for the second story. And joke was kind of, we might finish it one day. Maybe the next generation will, if we get enough money, but we don't really need to.
I
And it
love that
wasn't
for them.
I love it. I was like, oh, cool. Like, and they just, it's content. Like, it just feels
Right.
even tone. So I think overall the Balkans are really surprising. But I had Slovenia written down in my head because I didn't know anything about Slovenia and it is gorgeous there. And it is absolutely beautiful. It's so easy to get to countries surrounding it, but it was more expensive than I was expecting. But a huge push for sustainability there as well. And wow, just like stunning nature and would love to explore there more.
Excellent. Now, we've referenced this already. So you are a vegetarian. So I'd love for you to talk to us about any shifts you've seen in accommodation of your eating preferences from maybe when you started traveling to now, if there have been any. Like, where have you found maybe the best vegetarian food in your travels? Like, sort of talk to us how that's evolved as, society has evolved to understand that it isn't all just about meat and potatoes.
I need some context here because I have a feeling you two may be meat and potatoes people.
No,
No.
Hey.
the very opposite. So I eat like 80% vegetarian. I grew up in a very meat and potatoes
Yeah, me too.
household, and yeah, I think Megan's the same. Yeah, we are definitely. I would like to be more vegetarian, but yeah, my husband has some food allergies that make full vegetarianism like a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it can be challenging. I've found like when we're traveling in some places to find vegetarian food, like specifically at restaurants. Obviously, if you're going to the grocery store and cooking for yourself, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, and I was a pescatarian for 5.5 years. I started eating meat again in 2022, but I would say eat compared to me prior to 2017, which is when I started as a vegetarian and then moved to pescatarian. I eat a lot less. So, and we still eat full meals without meat. So yeah, it's definitely not all meat and potatoes.
I mean, I grew up in Alberta, which is like, for those listening, is a heavy, heavy beef industry. And we had steak like almost every Sunday in the summer. So I think there's a reason I'm not vegan, just to preface. And that is because that is way more difficult when traveling. And I was
Mhm.
spending a month in Albania with a very strict vegan to the point of reading the back of chip labels. And as much as I respected that was her choice and that was what it is, I just found it such a break in how we could enjoy ourselves. So I find vegetarian quite easy because it's such a single thing on a plate. So it's like, I'll have all the sides. I don't care if there's cream sauces. I don't care if there's anything else. Just don't give me that piece of chicken. And I do find it hard at times to find a direct replacement protein. And I'll say that in the sense of like a chickpea, any kind of bean or legume, any kind of soy product. Again, going back to the Balkans, some of the countries don't have soy products. It's just not in their, in their grocery stores.
Yeah.
So protein like granola bars are kind of my backup plan in terms of like if I'm grabbing a snack, I'll always grab that. But I never really found an issue. I guess it's just part of my lifestyle that it's really easy for me not to. I always find there's grilled vegetables and potatoes on the menu. But Germany, I think, is kind of at the top for veganism. I was in Hamburg and there was like a Korean vegan restaurant. And I was like, I went there twice because it was so good. Like 2 nights in there. She's like, you were here yesterday, weren't you? And I was like, yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
And it was $10. It was 10 euros. It was like such
I'll
good
be back
food.
maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you both have you both been to Berlin in like maybe the last
No.
5 years?
No.
No.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in Berlin, but I know that that is just a hype place for veganism. And veganism, I say that because, of course, then there's vegetarian food. So I think Europe is definitely winning there. I find Canada super accessible for vegetarian and vegan eaters. I find most restaurants, I'll say in France there's very good vegan food, but I find it to be a whole restaurant that's vegetarian versus how to explain, like there's a whole restaurant dedicated to it, easy to find, but a normal restaurant won't have an alternative. Whereas
Right.
my experience in Canada is many restaurants have at least 1 or 2 vegetarian alternatives. So
Yeah.
if you're hanging out with meat eater friends, then they're like, oh, can we go to like a normal restaurant tomorrow?
Do you mind?
Yeah, and I don't mind people eating meat around me. I think that's like a choice too, that it doesn't bother me because then you're limiting yourself to meeting cool people and like understanding people's purpose of eating meat. It's been interesting. I've spent more time with Muslim people, so of course they don't eat pork. So like sometimes it's actually it makes it easier to find food because if a restaurant's all pork, then we both won't go there. So
Right.
Yeah.
like elimination for decision making.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
love that.
Cross that off the list. Yeah.
There is one restaurant though in Prague that I want to like, and I cannot remember the name, but it is a vegan restaurant making traditional Czech food, but fully vegan. So you got like a
Cool.
hearty seitan, like the gluten, the wheat, kind of a beef, like a pork beef roll, and then you got like it was so good. But I was like, this is
No.
crazy. It's like hearty, fatty food. But it was fully, yeah. So it's
I would totally do that. Like my husband, when I
Same.
was pescatarian, was very open to eating whatever I ate. He didn't care. He's not a huge foodie anyway. So if we are in a place and we see a cool vegetarian or vegan restaurant, we'll definitely go there because if your entire restaurant is focused around this one style of cooking and eating, you know that and they still exist because restaurants are fickle. So you know that it's going to be most of the time good. So I love going to those as well, and we'll definitely add those to my itinerary if I see them for sure.
Yeah, I try and like I create map lists as well. So I'm constantly like saving and writing notes at each place, and I always try and make sure to include if it's vegetarian friendly or and like what does that mean? Like is it just a potatoes and veggie place or there's obviously Indian food's really great because it has all the curries and you've got the lentils and
Yeah.
legumes. So yeah, finding out like certain soups are surprising. They might have lentils in them, but in Turkey, I found I was like, why does it taste so good? And someone's like, well, it's made with like chicken fat broth, but it's a lentil soup. And I was like, oh,
Of course it is.
I was like, I definitely ate too many of them to like I was already too far in. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll just keep eating it.
You're just like
Yeah.
eating it and looking around. You're just like, I'm going to continue.
Yeah. I was like, that's why it tastes so like rich, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all just doing our best, Anna. That's all we
Yeah.
can do.
That's why I'm not vegan though. So I was like, there's no
Yeah.
chicken chunks.
Yeah.
That's right.
fine.
It's just essence of chicken.
I was just trying to get some soup.
Yeah.
That's all you were doing.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about solo travel and meeting new people. And I feel like it can be tough sometimes to make new connections, and especially if you're moving around often. So, how do you find that experience? And what tips do you have for some other solo travelers who want to like meet people and yeah.
This one is like, I feel like I finally cracked the code last September. So we're already like 2.5
Oh.
years into travel. And I feel like I finally, in Europe again, I'll give context of like how to meet people. So one, I'm going to definitely plug my travel community, because even this past week we had two people meet up in Colombia, one who I had met in Albania and the other I met in Serbia, and they're not from either of those countries, but they met in Colombia. And
Yay.
some others met up in Serbia this week. So that's a great resource to meet people. But I always say, if you want to make friends, you have to show people you want to make friends. So in a
Mhm.
hostel situation is a classic. Like, if you feel, and as a female as well, if you're like in a mixed dorm room, be cautious and like approach with the intention that you want to receive back. So if you want to be flirty and you're looking to like get romance, then like you put that out there. If you're looking to meet like a very cordial friend, then you just say hi to someone. So we have to remember, like, there's such a variety of personalities and cultures. Extroversion, that's not the word. Being extroverted,
Yes, yes.
being introverted. So my first tip is just say hi. That being said, I have learned as a Canadian, we are nice, and our hi and our niceness can be taken accidentally for flirting. So that is unfortunately like a downside in a way now. So I often might be a bit colder in the way I approach people, just to make sure like I'm just looking for a friend, or I'm looking to have dinner with someone tonight. And you're also solo, so I'm looking to have dinner with the right type of people. Um, Hostel World has a great chat. So if you're staying in the hostel, you get access to that chat 10 days in advance. And a lot of people are like, hey, I want to grab a beer tonight. I want to have dinner. And I find group settings are good, because then if it's a mix of international people, then chances are one of them will be cool, even if the rest are weird or creepy. Like, there'll be one what you define as normal. Um, but I think it's a mix of, I think you have to join activities in a way, whether that's a walking tour, a biking group, um, going for local events. I once did a walking tour, and then afterwards I wanted to have lunch, but not alone. And I approached these two Irish girls, and I was so bold. And I was like, girls, do you want to have lunch with me? And they were like, and you could kind of tell they
Oh,
were like,
were you the weird one in the group? And they're like,
yeah.
we don't want to hang out
No.
with her.
Well, they were on like a 2-3 day vacation. This was in Romania too. We ended up hitting it off, I'm telling you. The next day they were like,
Well,
girl, we're getting brunch at 11 o'clock. Like, you should come. They're like,
now
when are
they
you
want to hang
coming
out
to
with
Ireland?
you.
Yeah. So it's getting like, let me tell you, that first 30 minutes hanging out with them, I was like, I'm so stupid. Like, I was like, I've ruined their day. I forced myself into a lunch with them. One of them seemed to be maybe not hungry or was uncomfortable eating, just with a stranger kind of thing. And I'm vegetarian, so we add that in the mix. And then it's just like, I was like, you know what? We're having lunch and there's an exit. So if they don't want to hang out for the rest of the day, we both can leave.
Yeah.
So I think just putting yourself out there and, doing it with caution and knowing what you want. So I think we said this before, Megan, but understanding who you are and like what you're looking for in that moment. And also, if you're solo traveling, like, don't be afraid to call people from home. Like, a walk and a talk can do great things to just feel that connection with people. Just saying hi to the bakery, the coffee shop, the chatting up with your waiter. Yeah, there's like, but you really have to put yourself out there, and it can be hard, and it can be to get that confidence and that extra energy when you're on top of things already working and traveling and moving. So,
Yeah. And a follow up to that, actually, because you just sort of brought it up a little bit about calling home and whatnot. Do you get lonely?
oh, oh my God, yeah. Let's just like, that's for sure a downside. So, as much as I said Slovenia was beautiful, I was in Ljubljana, I believe it's the capital of Slovenia. I hope I have that right, but it's like one of the major cities. And gorgeous, gorgeous place. I had a beautiful apartment that I was able to rent from someone within my community, but I was so lonely. Like, honestly, I was like, it was definitely a downtime for me, and it was summer and it was gorgeous. But in those moments, I wish I had these tips, like even just the hostel world, or like just trying to find some kind of expat meetup, but I took myself for a solo date to the castle. They were doing outdoor movie nights. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go enjoy this movie. So I at least tried to put things in my schedule as well. It didn't lead to meeting anyone, but yeah, I got to like go up and watch cool movies under the stars in the castle. And yeah, I definitely get lonely. And I think for me, it's about navigating what is the loneliness. So if it's just boredom, or is it I'm needing some support, I'm needing some emotional connection, I need a hug, physical connection, I think too. Let's not even in the romantic sense, like just the idea of sitting close to someone, you're meeting strangers all the time, being able to sit next to someone on a couch and not like have to have your hands to yourself, like sitting comfortably. These little
Yeah.
things can like make a big difference. So, yeah, I mean, find the
Yeah.
cultures that you bond with as well.
That just brought back a core memory for me. So I spent a month in France in 2004. I won a work contest, and that was the
Mm.
prize. And but I went there for the first 3 weeks by myself, which was magical and wonderful. But then for the last week, when I was back in Paris from the mountains, my father joined me, and I remember the first hug
Mm.
after, and it was only 3 weeks. But the first hug of someone I knew, and I was just like, this is exactly what I was missing. And it hadn't clicked into that moment. But as
Yep.
soon as I was able to touch someone and feel comfortable doing it, it made such a huge difference. So when you said a hug, and that sounds like such a small thing, but it really isn't.
I'm like, I can be an affectionate person, but I can remember a similar feeling. I was in Portugal and I just I wasn't having like the best day. Everyone else was going surfing. I just didn't really want to go surfing. I wanted that homebody. I wanted my couch at that moment. And
Yeah.
my friend Sam, a Belgian guy, he's the nicest kid in the world. And he's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "No, I'm just down." And I was like, "Actually, Sam, would you be open to giving me a hug?" Like, just it was very much like a friend hug. And I just remember being like, that was so nice just to have a hug. And that's all I needed. It was like 10 seconds.
Yep.
And I was like, I
Yeah.
feel seen or something in that moment, I guess. And I was like, that was just so nice of him to do that to me too. And yeah, it's just, you don't know what you're missing. So I think sometimes if you feel
Yeah.
loneliness, you have to sit in your thoughts and like, you got to do the journaling.
Mm.
You got to do the thinking through of like, what is it I'm missing? Go to McDonald's if that's your thing. Like, I don't know what is it? You need iced coffee? Like, those little things that might just make you
Yeah.
feel comfortable again.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So talk to us about your travel friend. How did that start? How does it work? How can people join?
Yeah, definitely. So it's my little baby project. It's not a baby. My goal is like to speak more confidently about it because it's such an epic group to be a part of. And the idea that came was I would have friends. For example, one of you could ask me like, "What tips do you have for Thailand?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I've never been to Thailand, but let me ask my friend Sally." I don't have a friend Sally, but we'll just call her Sally.
Sure.
And I'm asking Sally. Sally's messaging me. I'm messaging you two. And then you two are being like, "Oh, can you ask Sally one more question?" And I'm like, "Ugh, this is kind of annoying." But I'm also
Yeah.
learning. I love learning from Sally. So my idea was putting all my friends in a group chat where I can learn from the discussion you have with Sally while you can get the answers you need. She can support you. And that's how your travel friend kind of came to be. I found like I was meeting more people from home, not only digital nomads, but folks going on those 10-day trips, wanting to test out remote working. Um, so I've made it into a community on WhatsApp because most folks are on WhatsApp, although a lot of Canadians are not. Let's just, if they have an iPhone, I'm like teaching people how to get on WhatsApp. It's crazy. So Canadians, download it. It's a great app. And there's a community within there, and then there's groups within there too of connecting locals and internationals with travelers. So if you've been to a place or you're local or you're knowledgeable, I ask you to join the groups. And then if you're curious or you have questions, then you can join the groups as well. And yeah, some people have met in person, which is like so exciting to see around the world. People share, eSIM tips or hostel tips, or do I need cash in this place? Or I'm only here for these kind of days. Anyone know of local events happening? Of course, AI is a huge part of travel now and travel planning, but there is just this component of a friend, of a human, of a trust factor that I just don't think the robots right now are replacing for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how it came to be. And I'm looking to grow it. So to have some meetings in person, there's a future trip in the works for the fall. I don't
Oh,
say too much because
exciting.
by saying that enough, I'm holding myself accountable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope to. I host a community call once a month too, which will always be free because I want it as a chance for people to get to know the community. And just like we're chatting now, it's like so great how people are helping each other. One person was on a train just this past Sunday, was on a train in Italy with their dog, helping someone in Canada who wants to fly to Italy with their dog. And I'm like, you two would have never crossed paths. So
No.
Yeah.
travel matchmaker, I don't know what to call it, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds to me like your little baby is growing right up. So, congratulations on that. Obviously, you've helped many, many people, and I'm sure it will continue to do so. We'll, of course, link your website, which we'll talk about as well in a moment, and wherever else people can find you. But before we talk about that, what destinations do you have coming up? Do tell us where you're headed so we can live vicariously.
So after a decent break being back in Canada, which has definitely subsided my burnout, I will stay in Canada for most of the summer, heading to British Columbia, visiting a lot of old acquaintances, family, some old family friends. I have a wedding to attend. So trying to maximize that and road trip out in BC because it's just amazing, and cross our fingers that the forest fires are, you know,
Yes.
Yeah.
controlled, but it will be what it will be. I mean, Canada's gorgeous in the summertime, so I don't know why I was here in the winter. I should have just come home in the summer, but
Yeah, no.
and then my goal for the fall, again, like you're gonna freak out that I don't have anything booked, but my goal is to get back to Europe to make my way to Southeast Asia for the first time. So I'm excited
Nice.
to explore Thailand and Vietnam and a lot of the digital nomad hubs. I think I'm gonna take it slow there, kind of living like a month a time at a place. Yeah, it would be much different to have a hot winter. So,
Hmm.
but that'll be my first time properly in Asia. I've been in Turkey, which is part of Asia, but more of the
Exciting.
continent. Yeah, so that's the plan.
Yeah. Amazing. So where can we and the listeners follow along on your travels?
Yeah, so you can find me anywhere at your travel friend Anna. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram. Unfortunately, there's nothing going on TikTok because I'm personally addicted to it. So I've had to step away from TikTok.
Fair.
My website is also yourtravelfriendanna.com. I have a free packing list on there. You can find the community there as well. And yeah, that's how you can find me.
Excellent.
Exciting.
Yes. And you know what? That is it for this week's episode. But thank you again, Anna, for joining us on this episode. And I'm positive that you have done a lot to inspire others to think differently about how they might want to travel, or at least maybe even give them the courage to actually do something they've been considering, or join your community if they do have questions about travel so that they can share maybe what they know, but also learn from other people. I think that that's amazing. And I see that going big places because you're right. AI is excellent. We all use it, but I think the human touch is still so necessary. And as always, you can find us on our socials at Travel Mug Podcast, on our website at travelmugpodcast.com. You can leave us a review on Spotify or Apple, or support the show through Buy Me a Coffee. The link is in our show notes as well. We will include Anna's links too. And until next time, bye everyone.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.